All right, this is a presentation on the impact of culture on emergency management planning and response. I'll be your presenter. My name is Blake Howard. I've spent about 10 years as a first responder. I've been involved with a few different elements of emergency management planning. One thing that I really enjoyed researching this topic was all the different factors, especially globally around the world, factors that can make up a person or a community's culture that has a kind of a profound impact on how they perceive, respond, and plan for emergency management events. So kind of an overview, a few objectives of things I'd like to highlight during this presentation. One is certainly the importance of the role that culture can play on a community during a disaster. There are many factors, and we'll take some time to identify some of them that really have an effect on the way communities perceive, prepare, and respond to these different disasters. And then I'll also be discussing some different identity factors and how they impact disaster, mainly perception, and how that plays a role in people's behavior. So a few cultural factors to keep in mind that may affect an individual or community's response planning to an emergency situation is their practices. Obviously, here in the United States, it's common practice for most people to have a cell phone, have constant communication either with other individuals or major media outlets. But that's not the common practice in other areas. A lot of people either don't have the ability to have that type of communication, or it's just not in their practice to do so. And that obviously, with communication being a major part of planning and response, it can certainly change the way an event takes place and how people respond. Beliefs and rituals, especially in other countries, they may have storytelling still in their culture, where they tell about events of the past, and that can certainly change how a person views certain events that happen to their area. And then you also have historical experiences, not only with historical events, like here in the state of Florida, we have a strong history of having hurricanes impact our state, and that certainly changes how the government prepares, and it also changes how individuals prepare and how they respond during those incidents. But you also have longer historical experiences with certain communities that either don't trust the government or have had bad response from the government, and that will certainly impact the direction that's being handed out during these events. Some identity factors to consider: gender and their perceived roles. Most cultures around the world have some sort of norm for what each gender is supposed to do in their culture. Right, wrong, or indifferent, these factors certainly play an impact on how a person's going to respond to an emergency. Maybe they're going to go out and try to, be more hands-on involved, or they're going to, take shelter. Race and ethnicity, a few things, especially here in the United States, there's obviously been some distrust with government depending on your race and ethnicity. But in other countries, you have different races and ethnicities that, may be at war together, and they cannot be housed in the same refugee area or the same shelter. So certainly factors to keep in mind. Same thing with, gender and sexual minority communities. If they don't feel like they're accepted in a certain shelter, that may affect, their decision to either respond to a shelter or not. And then religious factors as well. You have a lot of people who think that certain acts are acts of God, and you have other religious factors that they want to respond and try to help be charitable during these events, and that will certainly change the impact of that community. A big one is the socioeconomic status, which obviously can put people at a disadvantage mainly when they are of low socioeconomic status, and that includes access to certain resources before, during, and after a storm. They're more likely to live in poor infrastructure, so that they are going to be hit harder during an incident, which creates a heightened exposure to risk. The occupation and employment, generally people who are of lower socioeconomic status don't have quite the freedom that others may have with their employment. They may be more worried about that during an event. And then social capital, which is their ability to network and things like that, certainly plays a role in how they're going to recover, especially after an event. So in conclusion, there's obviously a bunch of different factors that make up a cultural identity, and these certainly play an effect on how communities plan and respond to disasters. A lot of times these factors intertwine with each other and create a greater impact on the response. And I think it's really important for us that are involved with planning to plan for these diverse communities and try to be as accommodating as possible during emergency disasters. So anyway, that's my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.